doing was I started doing a broad-scale survey of teachers across the school, both from general studies and from Jewish studies. And we had a faculty of about 200 or so. Both from general studies and Jewish studies, it's a big school. It's a big school, sorry. There are 1,400 kids in high school, 1,500 kids in high school. So both faculty who had been on the Shabbaton, faculty who hadn't been on the Shabbaton, faculty from general studies, faculty from Jewish studies, to try and get a feel from them what they felt the impact of a Shabbaton was on classroom learning and on the school environment. And some of the richest comments I got, let me just tell you about some of the comments I got. I had an English teacher who said students who used not to participate in class, after they got back from a Shabbaton, felt more comfortable participating in classroom discussions. I had a rabbinic teacher who said after he went on a Shabbaton with his class, students started asking questions outside of the curriculum. So beforehand, he was the expert in rabbinics, and students were asking questions about the classroom curriculum. But afterwards, students were willing to ask him questions about broader issues, about life in general, or about his family, or about whatever it was, things that were bugging them. He felt that he had forged a different type of relationship with students. Mm-hmm. So I went about gathering this information, qualitative comments from a broad spectrum of teachers, wrote up this information, and brought it back to the staff at large to say, hey, this is what we're hearing about the Shabbaton. And suddenly I found, an unintended, I was aiming for the 11th grade rabbinic teachers, an unintended consequence was that far more teachers said, hey, I want to go on the Shabbaton. But what ended up happening was the rabbinic, which I was aiming for, the rabbinics teachers turned to me and said, okay, let's try and take parts of the grade 11 rabbinic curriculum and apply them to the grade 9, to grade 9, and the kids will as doing something new or doing something in a new way. Do we think there was innovation there? So I brought this back to the teachers. The unintended consequence was that far more teachers were interested in going on Shabbotonim, and interested in hearing more about the program and engaging more in it in a variety of ways. And we can talk about those things. Those were unintended consequences. The intended consequence was that rabbinic teachers started seeing a new type of value in this, which was beyond sort of how it was going to get in the way of our curriculum and stop us from teaching the things we want to teach. But they started seeing a new value in it, and saying, okay, we can sort of take pieces from the 11th grade curriculum, bring them into 9th grade, and play with that. And they were willing to do, just to start with, to pilot, a couple of classes before the Shabbaton and a couple of classes after the Shabbaton. They weren't yet willing to commit themselves to going on they weren't all willing to commit themselves to going on the Shabbaton, but we slowly ramped up from that point where some of the teachers were going on the Shabbaton, and certainly there was a curricular piece that would flow into the Shabbaton through the Shabbaton experience, the 3-day Shabbaton experience, and then from the Shabbaton back into the school, and sort of do this evaluation, wrap-up reflection in the classroom afterwards. Mm-hmm. Okay. So what I'd like to try and do is take the narrative, the story I just told you, and consider the 6 questions that I laid out. And look, what I said to myself just now is that I'm not convinced of any of the answers that I have in my mind to these questions. So I'm interested in sort of having a dialogue and a conversation to see, what is innovation, was it worthwhile, what did it accomplish, things like that. Make sense?
Okay. Yep.
Right. So, Flora, you got a lot of experience with this. I'm relying on you.
I don't have a lot of experience. I have some experience.
Right. What is innovation? At least according to John's definition.
It seems like it was doing something in a new way.
Mm-hmm. My hope eventually is that it's a new way of learning. That we're still going to be teaching Shabbat, right, but suddenly we're going to be teaching Shabbat both through, the textual piece and through the experience. I think there are lots of stumbling blocks there in terms of, if nothing else, the human resources we have to make it happen, both on the Shabbaton and in the classroom. But I hope that eventually it leads to a new way of thinking about teaching and learning.
Right.
And to be honest, I think Shabbat's the easy one, right? like there are many parallel issues that we try and teach in our rabbinic Tanakh classes, which are much harder to teach because we can't take them on a Shabbaton, or we don't have like those experiences that are so well paralleled.
Yeah, I have thoughts about that, but okay. Yeah, let's move on and then we'll come back. That's okay.
Good. Was it worthwhile?
It seems very much so that it was.
I mean,
you got more buy-in and better different kinds of relationships were formed, and when you have buy-in, it's always better.
And it sounds like the perception. Sorry. It sounds like the perception from those who participated that their perception was higher, that they perceived the experience as something that was more valuable to them, and there was more takeaway that they then transferred to other situations.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are really enthusiastic. I'm a little bit more hesitant, and I think that part of it comes down to defining goals. I mean, I didn't clearly articulate, in retrospect, I didn't clearly articulate what my goals were here. Were my goals to bring the Tanakh teachers on Shabbaton, the rabbinic teachers on Shabbaton because I thought they'd add to the content of the program? Were my goals to teach the content of Shabbat in new ways? Were my goals to bring the excitement of the Shabbaton back into the classroom or back into the school, things like that? Were my goals just to, broaden the scope of my responsibility and broaden the scope of my power within the school by saying, I now, in addition to having responsibility for the Shabbaton, have classroom time? So I think a lot of it comes down to, what were my desired goals? I would like to say that my espoused desired goals were to teach Shabbat in a way that creates both greater knowledge and greater affect towards the Shabbat experience, towards doing Shabbat. And if I'm going to say that, my goal, I don't have a way to evaluate it. I don't know if at the end of the day, this integration between the curriculum in the 9th grade class and the Shabbaton work. I don't have a rubric for evaluating it. I could go back and sort of do those questionnaires and ask those questions, but all I have is my gut instinct.
But you had said before, I'm sorry, is it okay if I...
Yeah, please.
Okay. So you had said that when you started that the Shabbaton felt like it was disconnected from the daily learning, and so I felt that one of your goals was to try and integrate the school and the Shabbaton experience more than it had been. So from that point of view, it seems like you were successful.
I mean,
no?
Yes, that was certainly one of my goals. It's hard for me to know if that success lasted beyond the one, the class before and the class after. If there was some kind of ongoing definition of learning that changed. If the student's relationship to Shabbat was really qualitatively different. If the teacher's attitude towards this form of learning was different. It's hard for me to tell without going back and really asking those questions. Mm-hmm. And I guess that's going to come back with our question later, number 5. But let's go on to the next question. Was this a product, a process, a model for doing business? How did it come to be?
Sorry.
So I'm going to argue that what I was ultimately aiming for was a new process. And what I ended up getting, I think, was a new product. So ultimately, I was aiming for a new approach to teaching, an approach to teaching that integrated both the experience of the Shabbaton and the more formalized textual curriculum of class. And I ideally found that this new form of teaching would find some kind of relationship between the two. And I think what I ended up creating was a product, a curriculum, which we could bring into the classroom.